Hey guys, Barry Groover here doing the RAVE. Coming at you from Stanley, North Carolina. Okay, these are notes from the RAVE Diet and Lifestyle. This is on protein. When you ask the typical American, where does protein come from? They'll stammer for a moment and then say something like, from meat, dairy, and eggs, and they'll be dead wrong. Protein doesn't come from any of these sources. All protein on the planet comes from plants. In fact, protein is the result of the interaction of sunlight on plants. Although many people don't think plants have protein at all, plants are the mother of all the protein we eat. Most people think only animal products have protein, but the lawn in your front yard is full of protein. You may not recognize it, but a cow would. Herbivores, such as cows, eat plants to get their protein. When carnivores eat herbivores, they are actually eating the protein that originally came from the plants eaten by the herbivores. The problem with eating protein from animals is that it comes in a package of saturated fat and cholesterol, the two most deadly ingredients in the American diet. For most Americans, getting enough protein simply means eating animal foods. You'll have doctors and dietitians flatly state that you won't get enough protein by just eating plant foods. Unfortunately, they are following the protein requirements of our government, which have been set by the meat, dairy, and egg industries through lobbying efforts, and they are not only ridiculously high, but also potentially dangerous. Because this standard has the flag wrapped around it, nutritionists and health professionals have taken it as science and preached this gospel to the public. They are, in fact, mindlessly acting as salespersons for industries selling high-protein foods, which have paid off politicians. A friend recently went to her nutritionist who said that in order to get the protein her body requires purely from vegetables, she would need to consume more vegetables than she could possibly eat. This is not only scientifically false, but an affront to common sense, because if that were true, the human race would not have made it to the 20th century. It's extremely easy to meet protein needs on virtually any diet. In fact, you'd have to be starving not to get enough protein eating anything other than a junk food diet. Here's a simple quiz for you. Which has more protein, steak, broccoli, or spinach? Spinach has the most protein, then broccoli, and steak comes in the last place. The USDA dietary guidelines call for protein levels above 10% of total calories. 10% is 4 times what the average adult actually needs. And he's got a chart that says see below. This exaggeration, unfortunately, is not based on human needs, but the needs of food lobbies selling high-protein foods. It's all about profit. The protein in human mother's milk is only 5% of total calories. Mother's milk is providing protein during the fastest growth period humans will ever experience outside the womb. At no other time in our lives will we need a greater amount of protein. In fact, the average adult needs only half that amount, or 2.5% of calories from protein. Since 1974, the World Health Organization has recognized this, but they doubled their recommendations to 5% of total calories in order to account for infants and people who are sick. Guess what? The World Health Organization recommendation is exactly what mother's milk provides. Now, why would the U.S. government, or anyone else for that matter, recommend anything greater than 5%? Unfortunately, any protein standard higher than 5% is due to money and lobbying, not science. Most of us would say, well, there's no harm in getting too much protein, but in fact, there is potentially great harm because high-protein diets can result in kidney disease, osteoporosis, cardiovascular disease, and cancers. If you're eating more protein than your body needs to repair tissue, it's burned as fuel. Unfortunately, protein is both an inefficient fuel and a dirty fuel. It's inefficient because you have to expend more energy to take protein molecules apart than you do to break down carbohydrates and fats due to the complicated structure of protein. It's dirty because protein contains nitrogen. Instead of producing clean carbon dioxide and water, burning protein produces nitrogenous residues that are that not only are irritating to the immune system and toxic to the liver, but also put a big workload on the kidneys. High protein diets can also cause fatigue, digestive strain, and aggravation of allergies and autoimmune diseases. Given all this, why are our protein requirements so high? There is some dubious science behind the political efforts of food industries to raise our protein requirements. This science hinges on studies involving rats. In fact, the USDA protein requirements for Americans are based on the nutritional needs of rats. The very first study was done back in 1914, but subsequent studies with rats have continued since then and have formed the basis, i.e., the science behind our protein requirements. Needless to say, the high protein food industries embraced these studies as if they were manna from heaven. In the excitement over these studies, it apparently never occurred to anyone that rats are highly inappropriate for the study of human protein requirements. Rats do not eat like humans, digest food like humans, metabolize food like humans, grow like humans, and their protein requirements are not at all like humans. In addition, mother's milk from rats is a whopping 49% of calories versus 5% of human mother's milk. And the amino acid profiles for rats are not at all like human amino acid profiles. This shouldn't come as a big surprise to most of you because, among other things, just comparing a rat and a human should tell you right off there are monumental differences between the two species. But this incidental fact did not deter the scientists from their work and making our protein requirements rat-like to this day. In every study conducted with humans, protein from plant food exceeded human nutritional requirements. Studies in which humans were fed wheat bread alone, or potatoes alone, or corn alone, or rice alone, and I know a fruitarian who did bananas alone, have all shown that humans were able to meet their protein needs and get all the essential amino acids they needed. And vegetables have an average protein content of 25% of calories, far in excess of what we need. But the rat standard for protein has led us into even more difficulties because people have embraced the notion of a complete protein and pointed to eggs as the gold standard. This gold standard, however, is based on the nutritional needs of rats. In fact, the human body does quite well on foods containing incomplete proteins because the body is smart enough to mix and match amino acids in order to form a complete protein and meet the body's needs. In fact, the first thing the body does when it encounters a complete protein is break it apart into an incomplete protein so it can mix and match amino acids according to the body's current needs. The whole notion of a complete protein is outdated, based on worthless science, and should be discarded because it does not apply to human beings. Nor does the current U.S. government standard for protein. Doing a rave, guys. It'll change your life. Educate, don't medicate.